Have you ever seen such a decadent image in your life? A woman sprawled seductively on a couch, her breast exposed, her thighs exposed, her stockings down, and the word cocaine written in chalk behind her. This will all make sense because now, viewer discretion is advised. We are going to learn about the Weimar Republic. Weimar, although it's written with a W, is always pronounced with a V, in the German style. The Weimar Republic. Germany, 1919 to 1933. This was the era of the Weimar Republic. Germany, after World War I, was made to pay the price for losing that war. After the war, there was something called the Treaty of Versailles. The Allied and associated powers and Germany. Basically, the punishment for the war and losing the war for Germany was to pay enormous reparations to the Allies, to France, to America, etc., to Britain. Reparation payments that Germany could not afford. They were too enormous. So what they did, they borrowed money from America to pay America and the other allies the reparation payments. America put such a tremendous amount of interest on these loans to pay themselves back that Germany in the 20s went bankrupt. Look at these kids. They're building something kind of cool there with these bricks. Can you make out what these bricks are made of? They're bricks of money. These are Deutschmarks. Money lost all its value. You would have to take baskets full of Deutschmarks to the store to buy a cabbage. If that wasn't bad enough, Germany didn't have the money to care for its own war wounded properly. So the streets of places like Hamburg and Munich and Berlin were populated with tragic looking images like this. A guy who's lost his leg in the war, having to beg on the streets for money. Because of the economy, prostitution became endemic. I recently read that they think now as many as 65% of the German female population turned to some kind of prostitution in the 1920s. Take a look at this image here. I love the way they're dressed, don't you? These two are prostitutes. In fact, they are mother and daughter, who weren't prostitutes before the Treaty of Versailles, but like so many women, had to resort to selling sex, just as a way to make ends meet. And of course, this would be reflected in art. Take a look at this. This is an image by an artist called George Gross, and you can see so much going on here. And look at all of that sexual imagery, obviously speaking to prostitution. The Weimar Republic, it's called the Weimar Republic because after the war a new government was formed, and it was formed in the town of Weimar, where the dogs come from, Weimaraners. You've heard of those dogs, right? Big lovely dogs. The Weimar Republic was extremely left-wing, very liberal, and of course this would play out in culture as well. And yet, in a time of such incredible hardship, we see such a flowering in art, in architecture, in performance, in film. Oh, wait till you see German Expressionist movies from the Weimar Republic. It was the most incredible and incredibly advanced moment in the early 20th century. And it really saw the acceptance for one brief moment of people who perhaps had different sexual preferences to the standard, accepted sexual preferences of the early part of the 20th century. It was an incredible time, and its impact has been so huge that it's such a surprise that more people don't talk about it. So, willkommen to the Weimar Republic. the first thing I want to talk to you about is the dominant art movement that came out of the Weimar Republic. Neue Sachlichkeit. Oh, that's fun to say. Neue Sachlichkeit. I want you all to memorize the spelling and learn how to say this. No, just say it in English. Neue Sachlichkeit means new objectivity. The idea behind new objectivity was that these young, hip artists living in the Weimar Republic were going to paint just what they saw all around them, without bringing any of their own opinion or emotional connection into their work. Do you think they succeeded? Of course they didn't. How can you be an artist and be objective? You just can't. But it's called new objectivity, and indeed these artists did paint the world around them. They were all based in Berlin, and everything I'm going to tell you about in the Weimar part of our lecture from this point on happened in predominantly Berlin. They painted the prostitutes. They drew and painted the war wounded. This is a very famous painting by Otto Dix called The Skat Players. Skat is a card game. Take a look at it. These guys, veterans of World War I, horribly disfigured amputees. And you can see, remember I was saying how artificial jaws were like buttoned on? Take a look at the guy on the right and the gentleman in the center. With their buttoned on artificial jaws, and then look at the gentleman on the left and that weird tube running from his ear. I've shown you images, haven't I, photographs that really aren't that far removed from this painting. So guys like this, horribly disfigured, amputated, what could they do? There was no work for them. There was no job they could do. So they would sit around playing cards. And what I find so poignant about this very, very famous painting is, look at them. They're all dressed up as smartly as they can be. And look, the man on the right, he even has his little medal pinned to him. It's such a tragic image. And this tragedy is what the new objectivity artists were trying to capture. They also painted a lot of political satire. Take a look at this painting. It's called The Pillars of Society. And you can see sort of corruption, corrupt politicians, corrupt clergymen, a military presence, corrupt businessmen. And you'll see one has a teapot, no, sorry, a bedpan on his head. You know, a bedpan that you would wee into in the night. And look at the character on the right there. The top of his head is cut off like an egg, like a boiled egg. And can you see what's in his head? Well, that's poo. Basically, shit for brains. They also painted themselves. This is the artist Christian Schad painting himself with a prostitute in that rather creepy looking green diaphanous top. What was Christian Schad saying here? I don't think he did wear creepy green diaphanous tops, but I think he was really speaking to the idea of the doppelganger, that we all have something dark within us, this other person who's dark, who's creepy, who sleeps with prostitutes, who wears creepy green diaphanous shirts, when in fact Christian Schad was a perfectly nice person. But they also painted the society of Weimar Berlin. This is a very famous painting, again by Otto Dix, called Portrait of Sylvie von Harding. And she was a journalist, and isn't she every inch the new woman? There she is with her cigarette and her short skirt and a monocle as well. and short hair and a cocktail. Look at her hands, often in New Objectivity paintings, and in fact in German Expressionist cinema, which we'll look at in a second. You see these very large, oversized hands. But this painting is so famous and so iconic. Fashion goes back to it. It has been redone so many times that even Barbie's done it. One artist who didn't really fit in with this new objectivity was this guy here. He was actually a very competent artist, but his work was kind of old-fashioned, kind of traditional. He did landscapes, he did urban drawings like this of buildings and trees. He was very good at drawing animals because he loved animals. But there was no place for this kind of artist in the world of Weimar Berlin. So this young artist took a different path in life. Do you recognize who he is? This is Adolf Hitler, and we'll see him again at the end of this lecture. Adolf Hitler never really got over not being accepted into the art world. He didn't get into art school in Vienna. He couldn't infiltrate the art scene of the Weimar Republic. So 10 years later, what he did, he rounded up all of the New Objectivity art and gave it an exhibition. It was called the Degenerate Art Exhibition. And the idea behind it was that this art was so disgusting, so un-German, so revolting. He and his cronies, there he is with some of his cronies, came in on the opening day of the exhibition, and they laughed and made fun of all of these paintings. But what I find kind of interesting is that although he ridiculed this artwork, he didn't actually destroy it. And I think that once an artist, kind of always an artist. And maybe he just couldn't bring himself to destroy art that, on some level, he knew was fabulous. Architecture. I have to tell you about Bauhaus. This is a word that you will hear in your lives. Bauhaus was an architectural movement that came out of Weimar Berlin. You can see it's a little bit deco-ish, but much more severe. The idea behind Bauhaus was that form should always follow function. Does that make sense? Take a look at this. If I told you that this was built in 2005, you'd probably believe me, right? If somebody told me that it was built in 2005, I'd believe them too. It wasn't. This is from Weimar Berlin in the 20s. Look how modern it is. The Bauhaus movement also created furniture, like this fabulous chair here. Form following function. What does that mean, really? Well, take this chair, for example. It's very deco, right? But it takes it to the next level with this form following function idea. For example, what is the function of a chair? A chair is for a human being to sit on, right? That is the function of a chair. It does not need stylized sphinxes, does it, on the armrest? No. The form should follow the function. It's so chic, and we still love Bauhaus. Yet the art form that we most associate, I think, with Weimar Germany, especially Weimar Berlin, is the cabaret. Now, there had been cabarets for quite a long time, from the turn of the century, a little bit before actually. But it was really in Weimar Berlin that the cabaret became something else. Now, do you all know what a cabaret is? A cabaret is a show that takes place in a nightclub, so people can eat and drink, and is comprised of lots of different acts. A juggler, a singer, a comedian, a dance troupe, that kind of thing. In Weimar culture, the cabaret became incredibly artistic and avant-garde. Take a look at this. It's from a program from a cabaret in Weimar, Berlin, and just looking at those images, I think you can see that something very different is happening. A lot of performance art. Acts that melded entertainment with sort of high art, if you will. A lot of avant-garde ideas. A lot of avant-garde dancing. A lot of sexuality as well. These are performers in a cabaret. A lot of playing with gender, playing with sexuality. Look, Herren, Damen, gentlemen, ladies. This is a cabaret artist who is obviously doing some sort of transgendered act. This is a drag artist from the Weimar Republic. This is all pretty new stuff. It's pretty out there and it's very forward, isn't it? This is the 20s we're talking about. This is an act from a Weimar cabaret. These are not children, these are little people. So do you see what's happening here? The outsider is becoming the insider. Society's outsiders, little people, transgendered people, gay people, people who were too avant-garde, suddenly they were the insider in Weimar, Berlin. There is a seminal book on the subject. It's only a slim volume by an author and academic called Peter Gay, Weimar Culture, the Outsider as Insider. It wasn't going to last long, and it only happened in Weimar, Berlin. But for this brief, glorious moment, the people who society normally outcast in this era were accepted and celebrated. Not by everyone, but by others like them and beyond. This is why it's important. Because believe me, not everyone who went to a cabaret was a drag queen or a little person. But there was this incredible acceptance of people who were different. A few years ago, Karl Lagerfeld did a great shoot in which he celebrated the avant-garde dance of Weimar cabaret. You can really see the similarities here, right? One of the things that happened that I think most encapsulates this Weimar idea of the outsider as insider was the John Galliano, I think it was spring 2006 show, where, along with the standard beautiful models, his runway show brought the outsider, fashion's outsiders, and made them fashion's insiders. Here are some images from the Galliano show that really celebrated the idea of the outsider as insider. It was extraordinary. It was beautiful. Here's another image. And another. Older people, they're usually considered fashion's outsiders, right? Galliano made them insiders. People who are too voluptuous to be considered runway models, they became insiders. People who were just strange and wonderful and exotic looking, too exotic looking for fashion, were made insiders. It was a joyous celebration. It was a wonderful show. Which brings me to this week's think piece. Can you think of any instances from today where the outsider is celebrated and thus becomes the insider? I have a few ideas, but I'm not going to tell you what they are because I want you to think of your own for this week's discussion board. Sex and sexuality in Weimar, Berlin. As I mentioned a little while ago, the Weimar government was very left-wing. Times were very difficult, and there was really sort of an embrace, if you will, of sex and sexuality, sex itself became a fad, a craze. Take a look at this image, or this one, or this one. Wow. And with this sort of embrace of sex and sexuality, for this tiny little moment, and really only in Weimar Berlin, homosexuality became not only accepted but celebrated. This image on the right, this is from a gay club in Weimar Berlin. A gay club. Oh my goodness, if you were gay in New York in the 1920s, you had to be pretty damn secret about it. Not so in Weimar Berlin. Look at these guys. They are in a gay club. And I want you to note that they all have these strange haircuts. And they all have these, well, a couple of them have these sort of ribbons tied around their foreheads. But they certainly all have this rather unflattering, in my opinion, haircut. They're all gay, obviously. And I love this image because it really says that way before the gay tropes of the 1970s, and that's when we really think that, you know, gay men started using fashion and style to show that they were gay and to align themselves with each other. It was happening in Weimar Berlin with these haircuts and these headbands. See these fellas? They're ladies. Can I do that again just so you can see? Look. Look. Suddenly in Weimar Berlin, you see people embracing, truly embracing their sexuality in ways that never ever happened before and would take a very long time to happen again. And take a look at these ladies. These are men. Weimar Berlin. You would not see this in New York, Chicago, London. See the outsider as insider. Gay men and lesbians were always society's outsiders. For this one brief, wonderful moment, they became society's insiders. They were the cool people to hang out with. But this whole idea of sexuality and the way we think of sexiness visually, especially female sexiness, sexuality, so often we think of suspenders, stockings with suspenders, feather boas, lingerie, this kind of thing. This image is from Weimar Berlin. As is this one, again, suspenders showing stockings. As is this. And has this not become our instant definition of sexiness? Suspenders, feather boas, smokiness. We see it time and time again. Obviously, these are contemporary images. But if we made them black and white, they could have come from Weimar Berlin. This is a contemporary fashion image, and this is the cabaret dancer Anita Berber from Weimar Berlin. And you can see the stylist here and the photographer went directly back to Weimar Berlin for inspiration. There's a great book about sexuality that is full of fabulous images. Voluptuous Panic, The Erotic World of Weimar Berlin by Mel Gordon. If you find this aspect of the lecture interesting, I really recommend this book. It's fabulous. All right, German Expressionist cinema. We saw what was happening in Hollywood, right, with these sort of pretty classic melodramas. Oh, somebody gets tied to a railway track, the damsel in distress, and then they get rescued. And then we have those very charming little comedies with Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. Whoa, wait till you see what they were doing in Germany. See this guy here? Nosferatu, Dracula. German Expressionist cinema was extremely avant-garde. It was extremely stylized. Movies like Dr. Caligari's Cabinet, which was about a zombie. Nosferatu. You just saw Nosferatu. Dracula. It's one of the most terrifying movies you could see. It's silent. Watch it. It will scare you silly. And please note in both of these posters, the hands. Remember I said about hands in the Weimar Republic being very large and weird and kind of scary. Metropolis. This is an iconic movie. A science fiction movie set in the future. We weren't doing stuff like this in America. No, we had Clara Bow, the it girl, acting sexy in a little comedy. Metropolis is epic. And I'm going to show you a little compilation I made, it's only a few minutes long, of some key scenes from German Expressionist cinema, so you can see just how incredible it is. So you saw a clip from Metropolis. Metropolis is set in the future, and one of the characters in Metropolis is this robot. Yes, a robot called Hel, H-E-L, and she's a sexy lady robot and has this very iconic costume. In the movie, the actress who plays Hel is also playing the sweet leading lady who is not a robot. Again, playing with this double person, the doppelganger idea, good and evil, we have it in both of us. But I want you to look at that costume, and then look at this, and look at this. The robot from Metropolis has been used so often, it continues to be sourced, to be channeled in entertainment, on the runway. Look at this. Look at this. This even has those sort of electric orbs around the model. And again, this is Metropolis. No, it's not Beyonce looking cool as a robot. No, it's Beyonce channeling Hel from Metropolis. This is the poster from Metropolis. Take a look at this. Janelle Monáe with her Metropolis tribute. This is why you really do need to know your classic old movies, right? But I think C-3PO was the first person to channel the robot in Metropolis, don't you? And in fact, he was. George Lucas, when he created C-3PO, intentionally went back to Metropolis. One of the characters from Weimar Berlin who you have to know about if you want a career in fashion is Marlene Dietrich. She was an actress, a movie star, who was famous for wearing men's clothes. Again, you see this doppelganger thing going on. Male and female identities played with at once. Look at her in her iconic tuxedo there. She famously starred in a movie called Der Blaue Engel, which means the Blue Angel, where she played a character called Lola Lola. And there is Lola Lola. Lola Lola, in the movie, is a cabaret performer who is very naughty, extremely naughty, and she leads a nice university professor astray, to such an extent that his reputation and his life is ruined. But look here, the suspenders, the thighs showing, and the little top hat she's wearing. Who's that? Do you recognize her? That's Marilyn Monroe, 30 years later, channeling Marlene Dietrich. So this idea of movie stars recreating, movie stars from today recreating classic images isn't actually anything new. This is Marilyn doing it in the 60s. Oh, sorry, the 50s. And this is a fashion image from today, Der Blaue Engel, doing Lola Lola. Another movie star that we associate with the Weimar Republic and who has a huge impact on fashion is this incredible girl, Louise Brooks, who was actually American, but she found fame in Weimar Berlin. She really was the quintessential flapper. She was dazzling, beautiful, young. She was only about 19 at the height of her fame. She played very naughty girls too. Excuse me. And there she is. She was quite the fashion icon as well, as you can see. And she had this incredibly iconic haircut. Jet black hair. This short bob with these very straight square bangs. And there she is again, every inch the flapper. And oh yeah, there's Halle Berry channeling Louise Brooks. Do you even recognize who's channeling Louise Brooks here? This is Julia Roberts. Can you believe it? This is just a beauty image channeling Louise Brooks. And a Boucheron ad channeling Louise Brooks. Believe it or not, this is Michelle Pfeiffer channeling Louise Brooks. This is, again, I'm always telling you, aren't I? Know your classic movies, but know your classic movie stars too. Alright, this is when cultural connections start connecting and reconnecting. In the 20s, this young man arrived in Weimar, Berlin. He was an aspiring author, a young man from England who was gay. And he moved to Weimar, Berlin. One of the reasons he moved to Weimar, Berlin was that he heard that, life was a bit better for a young gay man in Berlin than it was in England in the 20s. His name was Christopher Isherwood, and he's actually one of the most famous authors of the 20th century, although he certainly wasn't when he arrived as a young man in Berlin. He wrote about his life there. He struggled financially terribly, he gave English lessons, tried to write, and while he was there, he met a fellow English person. This girl here, her name was Jean Ross, and she was an aspiring actress who sometimes performed in cabarets. Evidently, she wasn't very good, but she was sort of unusual, outrageous. Christopher Isherwood used his friend Jean Ross as a character in his book. The book he wrote about his time in Berlin. And he named her Sally Bowles in the book. He wrote maybe 2 or 3 books about his experiences in Berlin, but the most famous, and the one that features Sally Bowles, the character, is Goodbye to Berlin. And even though Sally Bowles is really only a secondary character in the book, it's a very funny book. She is such a fabulous character. We would call her today a train wreck. Sally Bowles was outrageous, always broke, always like playing men off each other for money, always in trouble, but fabulous in every sense of the word, and famously wears green nail polish because it's divinely decadent. Sally Bowles is an adorable train wreck of a character, and became iconic, and is still an iconic character, as you will see, because you will recognize Sally Bowles even if you don't think you will at this moment in the lecture. Goodbye to Berlin was turned into a play in the 50s called I Am a Camera. It's called I Am a Camera because in the book, this is what Christopher Isherwood set out to be. New objectivity, right? He was not going to engage in any of these people that he met. He was just going to be like a camera and record what was going on. And of course, that's the joke of the book, because far from being a camera in the new objectivity way, he gets so embroiled in all of the dramas of all of these people in Weimar Berlin that the title itself is a joke. It's a great play that was then turned into a movie, which is fantastic. And Julie Harris plays Sally Bowles, an actress you may not have heard of, but it's one of the most demented performances ever. It's really worth taking a look at. In the 60s, I Am a Camera was turned into a musical called Cabaret. And in the early 1970s, which you will learn when we do the 1970s, was the Deco revival. It was turned into a movie starring Liza Minnelli as Sally Bowles. In Cabaret, Liza Minnelli performs a fabulous number called Mein Herr, which sort of means Dear Sir, where she dances and sings on a wooden chair with stockings and suspenders and a bowler hat. It's iconic and it's fabulous. It's really worth Googling it. I was going to show you the clip myself, but I thought if I do, this lecture will go on forever. But take a look at this, and you will not believe how many times we, in the 21st century, go back to this 3-minute number in Cabaret. I could sit here all day showing you images of women, some famous, some models, etc., channeling Liza Minnelli and Mein Herr. Oh, and there's Katy Perry doing it. In the movie, Liza Minnelli has a very wonderful and glamorous and very iconic and instantly recognizable style. Take a look there, look at her makeup. A lot of feather boas, a lot of sequins. And there she is again. I want you to note her hair, note her makeup. And there she is again. It's very slinky, it's very sexy. Which is why fashion today goes back to Sally Bowles, Liza's Sally Bowles. So often, by the way, you all know who Liza Minnelli is, right? She's very famous in her own right, but she is the daughter of Judy Garland, Dorothy, in The Wizard of Oz. And here is another fashion image channeling Sally Bowles. And another, I know you've seen imagery like this. It's Sally Bowles. And again. And I love this one because of the green nail polish. Obviously speaking directly to Sally Bowles, to Cabaret, to Christopher Isherwood, divinely decadent. Okay, I want to talk to you about Madonna. And you're thinking, Prof H, what's going on? Why are we talking about Madonna in the middle of the Weimar Republic? Well, let me tell you. Madonna has made a career of channeling the Weimar Republic. Look, that's Louise Brooks. That's Madonna. That's Louise Brooks. That's Madonna. That's the robot from Metropolis, and that's Madonna with her famous Jean-Paul Gaultier bustier, which is a direct homage to the robot in Metropolis. There's Marlene Dietrich. There's Madonna doing Marlene Dietrich. There's Dietrich again. There's Madonna again. That's Dietrich as Lola Lola. There's Madonna as Lola Lola. Madonna loves the Weimar Republic. She's very, very honest about it. So it's no surprise that, oh look, there's Liza Minnelli as Sally Bowles. And there's Madonna doing basically the same routine at the Texas Stadium in 1987. As I said, there is nothing wrong with channeling the past, getting inspiration from the past, but many people think that Madonna was the first person to wear suspenders and cavort on a chair, that she was the first person to dress in a tuxedo. No. Madonna loves the Weimar Republic, and as you will learn in the 80s, Madonna was not, never has been, and never will be a fashion instigator. She's a fashion communicator. She is a great fashion communicator. Yet she never really did anything original, but she was great at communicating ideas. So what happened to Weimar Berlin? Well, this is the most famous cabaret in Weimar Berlin, the Eldorado. Take a look at the Eldorado. This is what became of the Eldorado. In 1933, that failed artist, Adolf Hitler, became Chancellor of Germany, and the world would change. What happened to those performing artists, those outsiders as insiders, those avant-garde creative people of Weimar Germany? What happened to the homosexual community? What happened to the war wounded? What happened to those outsiders? What happened to the artists, the songwriters, the cabaret owners, many of whom were Jewish? Well, some did get out of Germany in time. They went to England, they went to America, but many did not get out of Germany in time. And for the people that we've been studying, these wonderful creative people that we've been looking at for the past 20 minutes or so, the outsider was not the insider anymore.